Hi, everybody. Today we are here for Galactic Center Diaries, a Galactic Center diary entry. We have John Sandbach. He is an astrologer. He's been doing this a long time, and he has decided to come on and talk about his own experiences with planets conjunct the GC, the Galactic Anti Center, all of that stuff. You want to say hey?
Hi, everybody. It's great to be here.
Yeah, I'm really excited for this. I'm glad that you wanted to do this.
Yes.
Okay. So we'll start with, you have Jupiter retrograde conjunct the Galactic Center.
Yes.
Do you mind if I post a picture of the chart?
No, that's fine.
Okay. Just want to make sure. So if anybody wants to follow along, after watching this or while watching this, they can. Okay.
And I think too that the Galactic Center is moving toward my Jupiter. Like the current, transiting Galactic Center is actually gradually moving up to my Jupiter. So that's.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, I see what you're saying. Sorry, I was like, what? And then I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Okay, so you've got Jupiter retrograde.
Yes.
The GC. Now, look at my notes, my questions that I have. Okay. How do you feel like it manifests for you? Do you think it charges or mutates or transforms, say, your beliefs, your truth, your understanding, which does feel very personal because this is going on in your fourth house? I'm using Placidus, but I mean,
yes,
in the fourth house.
It's in the fourth house too in the Koch system. Yeah.
Okay. How do you think it manifests for you?
Oh, well, for one thing, I am into so many things and have been all my life. There's just this wealth of things I'm interested in, curious about, that sort of thing. In fact, I'd say that maybe the one biggest mistake I've made in my whole life is spreading myself too thin. I took 3 years off for my whole life just doing nothing but gardening. And I mean, immersed in it, immersed in it year round. I read, I paint, I write poetry. And so that Jupiter thing of being like very expansive.
Yeah.
I've always been that way, just very expansive. And I'd say the main way it manifests is I'm a very optimistic person. I really believe in that Buddhist idea that we're all headed toward enlightenment and we're all going to get there. It's not a question of whether or not we're going to make it or not. It's really just a question of how bumpy the road's going to be.
Yeah.
And so because I'm so optimistic, I'm very aware of the other people's depression. There's so much heaviness in the world. There's so much weight that people carry. And I think one of my reasons for being here is to help people lift that off themselves and become hopeful about the future and become optimistic and positive.
I really like that. You saying that with this is off topic of Jupiter, but with Saturn in the 12th in Leo, I really like everything you just said too for that. It's kind of like it feels like it eases some of that 12th house heaviness.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? I like that. I think it's good that you take it that way, that the Jupiter conjunct the GC. I like that.
Yes.
Let me ask you this, because you've got it retrograde in your chart. And I know that we talked a little bit about retrogrades before. But I've got, okay, so when a planet is direct conjunct the GC, I do think that the GC can kind of flip it and turn it retrograde. The GC does seem like, because it mutates, because it does that, it does seem like it could flip a direct planet to function more retrograde. Now, the question that I actually really have, well, I do feel like I got a good handle on that part, is when a planet is retrograde conjunct the GC, does it flip it direct, or does it flip it even further retrograde.
It feels to me like it's further retrograde.
I figured that's what you would say. And you have,
Yeah.
and I know that we talked about like the retrograde planets have, being turned more inward and having like a spiritual, being more spiritual, if you will, like spiritually charged. And you've got so many other things in your chart that are like spiritually charged as it is.
Yes. Uh-huh.
I figured you probably would say that.
Yes. Yes.
I guess I wonder if that might be the case in everybody's case, but I can totally see that being the case here.
Yes.
Do you feel like it kind of adds an even greater like spiritual bent to like your and I think I know how you answered this too, the way that you understand things, the way that you find truth, all of those. Do you feel like that it's even more, the spirituality is even more intensified?
Yes, I feel like it. I definitely feel like that's true. Yeah, real definitely.
Very cool.
I mean, I really feel like I really go with the Buddhist idea that we are living in a world of illusion. This physical world is a world of illusion. And I think when I look at things and look at people, I try to look at what's inside them, like see into them, or see into things. And inside everything is so much beauty. It's just so much wonder, but the dangers of this illusory world is that there's a lot of ugliness here. There's a lot of things that are really ugly, but I think my Jupiter is always trying to see beyond that.
I think it probably is. I think, and kind of, again, and it's in the fourth house. It's like wanting to get to the core, right?
Exactly.
So,
and wanting to get intimate with people. Like, by that, I mean, I love, it really bothers me when people say things like, oh, well, I shouldn't share that with you because it's private, or, you wouldn't be interested. No, I like to know what's really going on deep inside people. I love that.
I'm guilty of doing that kind of stuff. Of not wanting to like, well, I guess it also depends on who I'm with, but like, I'll do that. Like, God, I don't know if you even are going to give a shit about what I'm about to say, or,
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I can. Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
It's probably a bad habit.
Well, I think it's part of it is that is your Scorpio,
Probably. Like
probably when you feel really safe with someone and really good with them, then you're fine with talking to them openly,
Yeah. And it's even better when I feel like it is reciprocated,
Yeah.
Because sometimes you can have like, conversations with somebody that feel very one-sided, and you're like bearing your soul and they're like not saying shit, and it's like,
Right. Yes, that's disturbing. Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
And that's especially disturbing to Scorpio because they go, what are they collecting information for?
Yeah.
It's like, what are they going to do with what I'm telling them? Wonder what they're thinking,
later.
Yeah. Yeah.
Speaking of collecting information, you have your Mercury and Uranus conjunct the Anti Center.
Yes. Yes.
Let me see. I have notes about.
Well, can I ask you, what do you think of the Anti Center?
Well, I've been trying to take it from like a like what it is in space, right? And it's an area of the sky that is much, much calmer than the GC. Very calm.
Yes.
But it's like covered with space dust. There's a lot of dust around it. So this area is not as well seen. It's also in an area called the zone of avoidance, which makes it harder to see from Earth. That science is a little bit above my head, if I'm honest. But it's something going on with that. You can't see it as well from Earth. And it's next to a very bright star. Now, the bright star in this case, from my understanding, doesn't light this area up, but it is kind of like in front of the area, so you can't see it. So to me, it seems like an area of the sky where planets there might be kind of blinded or covered by space dust in a sense.
Uh-huh.
But at the same time, I do think this is my theory anyway. The GC is such an area of energy.
Yeah.
Being around all the time that at different points in one's life, perhaps, activated by transit or progressions or solar arcs or whatever, bunch of different shit. It's like the energy shoots over from the GC to the anti-center and shocks the shit out of anything that happens to be in that area, kind of lighting it up for itself. So it's not covered in space dust. It's not blinded. It's not all of these things.
Yes.
Which, depending on what planet we're talking about and what the rest of the chart looks like, that could be a very painful thing.
Yes.
That could be a very illuminating thing. It could be illuminating and painful.
Yes.
But necessary, right? So these planets are seen a little bit better.
Yes.
That's kind of how I'm thinking of it right now. What do you think about it?
Well, okay. So the galactic center, in a way, is kind of like the sun, in that the sun is the center of our solar system.
Yes.
So the galactic center is what that is a bigger center.
Yes. It's what, yeah.
Yeah. So Elias Lonsdale talks about the point exactly opposite our sun is actually the Earth. He calls it the Earth point. And what it is as the sun shines on us, that point opposite the sun is the shadow that the Earth makes. It's because that's where Earth is blocking the light. So that point exactly opposite the sun is the Earth's shadow.
Okay.
And so I'm wondering if the point exactly opposed the galactic center is almost like the galactic center's shadow. And you talked about it just now as like dust and something hidden and like that, so it has a feeling of being like a shadow.
Yes, I can see where you're, yes, there could be, yes, there does feel like there is like a shadowy quality to it, just because it's, yeah.
And my Mercury and Uranus, conjuncting that, mainly in the Uranus, I am very, very interested in dark things. Oh, I love, I read horror novels, and I love abnormal psychology. When people are twisted, it fascinates me.
Same here.
Yeah. And so I wonder if that doesn't come from that shadow of the galactic center,
It could. It very easily could. I think, yeah. And it's all, yeah. I mean, and there's a weirdness, right, to being interested in all of that stuff.
Oh yeah, right.
Right. Like, I mean, I don't have Uranus there, but I mean, I remember being like, in elementary school and really finding serial killers interesting, like the
oh yeah.
And this was before it was like trendy for like, true crime,
right.
Over the past 10 years, it's kind of become trendier. But I remember talking about that and thinking their minds were interesting. People being like, why the fuck are you talking about that?
Yeah.
Well,
it's so, okay. So for one thing is one of my most important interests is healing. I really am interested in therapeutics. And I think that's what astrology needs to be is therapeutic. Yes. Helps people. Yeah. So if you're really into therapeutics, you want to know all about the diseases.
Yes.
And so that, that's why I'm interested in pathological stuff, because I think it helps assist with learning about healing.
Yes, because how can you, if you don't know what the pathology or what the disease is, right, you can't really properly heal.
Yes.
Essentially. There's probably a less crude way to put that.
Yes.
Yeah. So, so Uranus conjunct the Galactic Anti Center does make me think, and with Mercury there, it does make me think that you have been pretty ahead of your time. And you like that. I do think, I wonder if you have always realized how much so.
I got to tell you something funny. I have a really, really good friend. She's she's Japanese. She lives in Washington State, and she read a novel that I wrote. And I said, and she said, "Oh, John," she says, "this is going to be." She says, "People are going to read this, and they're going to get so much out of it. It's going to be wonderful." She says, "I think it'll take about 200 years."
So that goes nicely in line with what okay, there we
Yeah,
go.
yeah. Uh-huh.
There, yeah, I feel like, yeah, like, and it's not that I don't think that, I think you do appreciate this about yourself when you realize, like, I do think that you appreciate it when you realize it. But
Yes.
I do wonder if sometimes it's not as clear exactly how ahead of your time, or if it hasn't been your whole life, like, as, does that question make sense?
Oh, yeah, it makes sense. Yeah. Yeah. And, earlier on in my earlier life, uh, people wouldn't, like teachers and things like that, wouldn't relate to me or whatever. And it made me feel, rejected, or like there was something wrong with me or like that. But then I got enough positive support from people that I really respected that it really kept me going. It really kept me going.
Good.
So,
Did it ever feel like when perhaps Uranus and Mercury were kind of lit up, right? Because I do think I think they probably got shocked. Was it like was there ever, I feel like in your case, there's probably, I mean, there could be some pain about it, but it feels more like it would be a positive shocking, like a positive realization, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? Like,
yes,
it doesn't seem like there's a whole lot of pain in this case, or like it wouldn't be as painful, if that makes sense.
I think you're right about that.
It feels much more, yeah.
The main issue around it, I think, was self-confidence. And that comes from the Saturn in Leo, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've always been really looked up to, like artists who they just go ahead and do their thing. They don't care what critics are saying. They don't care what people are thinking. They're going to do their thing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, see, with that moon in Libra that I have, I've always wanted other people to relate to what I'm doing,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a little bit of a conflict there, you know.
Yeah. And I wonder, because you do bring up the moon in Libra, it is trine. It is trine Uranus a little bit more loosely, but definitely Mercury.
Oh yeah,
It
close
seems like
trine there.
perhaps when that shocking happens, does it help you, okay, does it help you feel like you relate better, or other people relate better to you, or does it free you from feeling like you need that, I guess?
Uh-huh. When you say the shocking, tell me a little bit more about that.
It's like, I envision like a lightning rod being shocked. Like,
Uh-huh.
when I think of planets conjunct the galactic, that's like literally what I see in my mind, like a lightning rod.
Uh-huh.
So I guess I'm, but in this case, it doesn't feel like it would be painful most of the time. I some galactic anti-centers things going on there, it seems painful. In this particular case, it doesn't quite so much.
Actually, it's more than it seems to me fascinating.
Yeah.
Like I get really caught up because the shocking is like sparks. And so I get caught up in watching him, or, like, yeah, no, I love him actually.
I bet Uranus there really does. I bet it really enjoys that.
Yes.
I bet it does.
I'm a lot stranger than most people imagine, And so I really try not to be threatening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
probably one of the hardest things with the threatening thing is Mars conjunct the ascendant.
Let's talk about that for a second.
Oh boy.
Yeah. because that actually is a big piece here.
Uh-huh.
Okay. So I have this other theory that the trines to the Galactic Center and the sextiles to the Galactic Anti Center are how the stuff from the GC is brought down to Earth.
Yeah.
And the reason for that is where Earth technically falls between the GC and the Galactic Anti Center. It is a little bit closer to the Galactic Anti Center than it is to the GC.
Yes. Uh-huh.
And when I did the math on it, it came out to about where a trine would be in a chart.
Mm-hmm.
So it seemed like, and again, I'm not trying to say that's Earth in your chart. I'm not trying to say, I want to make that clear to anybody watching this, because I don't want to be confusing. But it does seem like where the trines are, if you have trines to the GC, that is a place where that energy can come down to Earth and be utilized on Earth.
Yes.
So you have your ascendant is there.
Right. Yes.
As is Mars. They're both
right.
within that window of orb.
Right.
So, okay. So I wrote some stuff down, some thoughts down about, okay. So it seems like, okay, you are able to, you can correct me if I'm wrong here. You are able to bring all the energy at the GC down to Earth by way of your very sense of self and how you approach the world around you, provided you believe in yourself like you should, and your career with the sun and the 10th house in Taurus. I do think that the belief is important. That, like, you know what I mean? Also, also specifically self-belief, because I pulled it in Placidus, but you've got Aries on the cusp of the 9th.
Yes.
Aries will bend to Mars. Mm-hmm. It does seem like, in the 9th house is beliefs and understanding and all that self-understanding, that self-belief does feel like it would play in very prominently with Mars, and Mars being able to bring the GC stuff down to Earth.
Yes.
Like if that wasn't there, if that self-belief or that self-understanding wasn't there per the 9th house, Mars might have a more difficult time.
Yes.
Or it would still probably bring things down to Earth, but it might not always bring things down to Earth in the way that you want them to come down to Earth.
Right. No, that seems all totally right to me. Yeah.
Also, Mars and Virgo conjunct the ascendant. Also, why did I write that there? Also, independent belief. I don't really know why I put that in the quote. I don't know. There does need to be a focus to this, probably with Mars and Virgo. The focus, the focus, like when there's like a focus there, it feels like you could be on fire with bringing things down to.
Yes.
Does that make sense? Like,
yes.
If there's not a scattering of, not if it's focused, if it's also, if you're able to discern what you're supposed to bring down to Earth too, because like you mentioned with Jupiter conjunct the GC and having so many interests and stuff, it's like, what do you want to bring, what do you want to bring down? All this shit is being charged. What
right. Right. Well, I'll tell you this too, that, so when I was in grade school, I talked my parents into buying me a piano, and I was obsessing on the piano. And I ended up, by the time I was 18, I was going to go to college and major in piano.
Okay.
And my stepfather told me, he said, if you do that, I will not pay for your college. He says, if you major in anything other than piano, I'll pay for it. If you major in piano, I won't pay for it. And so I gave up the piano. I just gave it up. And, I think I needed to give it up. I think what that was a past life thing I was repeating. I needed to get into astrology. That's what I needed to be doing. But at the time, we're talking about the 1960s, there was no way to get into astrology. It wasn't really popular. There weren't teachers around, So I had to kind of push forward on my own, as best I could.
Yeah, and there also wasn't the internet to connect.
Oh yeah.
You know what
No, we're talking about the dark ages. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that does seem like that would add a whole it would make it much more difficult to just even be found,
Exactly.
You would really have to live in an area where it was a of an interest to people. I would think that would have
Yeah.
been, you know, important. But yeah, I mean, it probably was to push you towards astrology, but still that had to have been difficult for that young to be like, I'll pay for anything except for this. Like,
Yes. Well, and you know, for a while, I felt like, well, I went through like anger toward him and resentment and like that. And then I've come to realize he just felt like he was doing the right thing by me. He thought he was saving me, like you know, that I wouldn't be able to make a career out of the piano kind of thing. And I think subconsciously I didn't want to do the piano thing. I really didn't want to.
Like maybe you had just kind of continued on with that because you had been doing it for.
I had a past life in Russia where I was a piano teacher.
Did you?
Oh yeah. And so I think that felt cozy to me. And so I was just going to do it again, you know.
When was it?
I probably died like in the 1920s, maybe.
I asked because I've always had a real like interest in Russian history. Like
yeah.
a weirdly. So that's very interesting.
Yes.
Very interesting.
Yeah, I had another Russian lifetime around the time of the French Revolution.
Oh, that's interesting.
And I used to go to the French court, but I wasn't French, so luckily I didn't get my head cut off.
that would totally, getting your head cut off would totally show up as some trauma shit.
I definitely. I have a couple of friends that have that exact trauma shit. Yeah. Yeah.
Before we okay, so I'm going to touch on your avatar gates just real quick.
Okay.
And I'm just going to throw this out there to anybody watching this. This is still something that I have not dived into a whole bunch. I know that it is important. I have not wanted to dip my feet into the religious-y end of this that I do feel like I'll have to do to really understand it to a certain extent. I guess I don't have to, but I like to understand things from all different angles. And that is an angle that I do feel like this has to be understood by or understood from. So you have your North Node at 14 Taurus. You have your South Node at 14 Scorpio. You have your Saturn at 16 Leo. The avatar gates are essentially the midpoints between like the GC and the Super Galactic Center, and the Anti Center, and then Anti Center and whatever opposes the Super Galactic Center. I'm still not 100% sure about that one yet either. But it does seem like, and keep in mind, this is also, I mean, and you know this is also your nodal axis being like lit up, right? These, yes. and so this is already important, but it does seem like, and also interesting, the only one that's not is the Aquarius gate, which I think it's called, I like to call it the gate of the enlightened man. I don't think that's actually, I think it's also called the angel gate. But it does seem like, it seems like the nodal axis and Saturn could be both divine teachers for you. And like you can release these teachings out through these gates. Do you feel like that? And I guess my other question is, with the nodal axis being lit up here like this, and the South Node, you know, being either what we need to balance or what we need to, in some cases, move completely away from. Do you feel like that has ever been an issue, like in holding on too much to South Node stuff?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's definitely been an issue. Yes.
But when you move, when you do like North Node stuff, like it seems like that release could be like exquisite.
Oh, yes. It feels like relief.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. But, you know, the North Node stuff can be hard to get to. Like,
absolutely.
Yeah, we need to really work to push to do that, you know, kind of thing.
That shit's incredibly hard.
Yeah. You know, this may sound weird, but one of the things with my South Node is I'm very addicted to communicating.
That makes total, I mean,
And you know how people will say things to you that just stick in your head?
uh,
I think that happens because those are the things we need to hear.
absolutely.
And so there was this guy that was into Sufism, and I was talking to him one time. I was in his place down in Arkansas, and he said there's an old Sufi saying that is, think twice before you try to wake someone up. They may need their sleep. And you know, I get very frustrated when I can't communicate with people.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm a good communicator. So generally when I can't communicate with someone, it's because they don't want to hear what I have to say, or they don't want to go there or something like that. And then that can make me feel real frustrated. Well, I think one of the most powerful things I've ever done in my life is to get to the point where I can say, okay, I'm going to give up trying to communicate. I'm going to let it go and just go toward the understanding, the ninth house, my North Node, just go toward that and let the communication issue just rest. When people are ready to communicate, they will, you know, kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And some people just aren't, some people aren't ready to.
Oh yeah, no, right, exactly. Or I can look right at them and say things and they'll nod their head and say yes. And I realize, and I'm thinking, you're not really getting it. You just want me to shut up is all. You know, you want to move on to something else because you don't want to hear what I have to say, you know. But that's okay. I've gotten to the point that really is okay. It's just the way things are, you know.
I think that's very good for you with your North Node in the ninth. I think that's
right.
I think that's a very good thing. And with your
right.
South Node and with your South Node in Scorpio wants to hold on to think, you know, it knows it needs to release, but it wants to hold on too.
Yes, exactly.
I think that's awesome that you are able to do that.
It's taken a lot of time and a lot of practice, kind of thing.
Yeah.
It didn't come out slowly or easily.
It probably didn't.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that's pretty good. I think is there anything else that you would like to share about thoughts on the GC or anything you have going on with the Galactic Center, the Anti Center, the Trine, the Avatar gates, anything that I didn't touch on that you would like to touch on?
Not that I can think of, except maybe other than there's so much energy in the Galactic Center. I think that it can cause us to feel like we're losing control, or we don't have control, or we don't know where to focus, or that kind of thing. And I think if you can take a Pisces approach to it of just accepting, letting the energy in and just accepting it and flowing with it, because it has a way of organizing itself. Like you don't have to control it. It does what it needs to do. And I think you just need to let it take you over so it can use you, kind of thing.
In that way, I've always kind of felt like the GC definitely has flavors of like Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. What you're talking about here is very
all of them.
Plutonian. It's very a Plutonian kind of like.
It is.
Don't fight it. Just let it do what it needs to do.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes total sense.
Well, before we head off, do you want to share where people can find you?
Oh, yes. johnsandbach.net is my website. And then if you want to look at any books I've written, you can go to amazon.com. There's a lot of books out there. There's novels, there's books on haiku, there's astrology books, and also Kindle. There's a lot of stuff I've done that's on Kindle.
Okay.
And I love to do readings. So if you'd like to have one, just let me know.
And I'll put the links in the description box as well, so people can.
Okay. Thank you very much. That's great. That's great.
And I guess we'll head off here. I'll see all of y'all later on.
Okay. Thank you all for listening. And thank you for drawing stuff out of me. And, you know, you're really good at what you do.
Thank you. And thank you for allowing me to draw stuff out of you.
Oh, certainly. Certainly.
All right, y'all. I'll see y'all later.
Okay.